All right, welcome back. It's now time for you to put away your holiday candy, and we're going to dig into the next edition of Mayday Monday. Before we get too far into this thing, I wanted to talk about or mention the line of duty deaths since our last podcast. There was a wildland firefighter from California who passed away from sickness, complications of COVID and infection. Cumberland, Maryland firefighter died of COVID. Elwood, Indiana firefighter, also of COVID. Hardyville, South Carolina captain died of COVID. Columbus, Ohio firefighter passed away due to COVID. Hillsborough County, Florida firefighter from COVID. We had Yuma, Colorado volunteer firefighter was killed in a motor vehicle accident. A Jackson, New Jersey volunteer safety officer had a medical emergency, suffered a medical emergency and passed. And Texarkana, Arkansas assistant chief was killed in a motor vehicle accident recently on the roads down there. Speaking of a motor vehicle accidents, again, remember last month when the podcast and our Mayday Monday, we focused on Lieutenant Brad Clark from the Hanover County, Virginia Fire Department and his tragic accident that he had in October of 2018, where he was killed on interstate outside of Richmond by during remnants of a hurricane. So if you haven't seen that, please go back and look at that podcast. Remember Brad, research the all of the resources that are available to us for highway safety, and work on making yourself hard to kill on those roads, because they're very dangerous. Again, one of our leading causes of line of duty deaths is operating on the highways. So this month I kind of wanted to slow down a little bit and reflect on line of duty stuff, line of duty death information, some data that we can get. This is our 12th podcast. If you guys have been with me, again, we started this thing last November where we talked about line of duty death in Chicago. Herbie Johnson died in a fire behavior incident in a typical 2.5-story wood building they have in Chicago. We started it out talking to Pete Van Dorp. Bobby Halton was here with us. So if you haven't had a chance, go look at that podcast. Again, they're all on YouTube. They're all on Fire Engineering's websites and stuff. You can get these things. Look at that. That was our first one. And through the year, we've touched on just about every way that firefighters are dying on our fire grounds and incident scenes. With that, though, again, right, there's a limited amount of data that's kind of out there. One of the guys who's doing a lot of work with the data is Don Abbott, and Don Abbott is with us to talk about that. He has started a project, Mayday, through some funding that he got. He started this project, and it has really taken off with people submitting all of their information from Mayday calls that they've run, that they've been on, and this information goes into a database. Don has been reviewing it and putting out a lot of information for us to use to add to our procedures, add to our focus, our training, and look at how we can, again, survive this fire ground, right? Survive our fire grounds. With that, again, I know that Don's been around for a long time in the fire service, started out, Midwest. And I think Chief Brunacini kind of took him. He saw what he was doing with the Abbottville. Some of you may have been around long enough to know about Abbottville and like the dioramas that he was using to talk really about ICS. So again, he's going to spend the next hour or so talking about some of the data, but let me give him a chance to introduce himself and tell us what he's been doing. Thanks for coming, Don. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we basically are entering our 6th year with Project Mayday. By the end of the year, we will be over 11,000 Maydays on the career side and over 5,000 on the volunteer side. And basically a Midwest person, the Indianapolis area, retired after 24 years. My wife and I then went on the road for 10 years doing Abbottville. And then Chief Bernasini hired me to come to Phoenix to develop the Command Training Center. And we developed a Command Training Center, which later down the road became Blue Card. And for the last several years, we have been doing Project Mayday and looking at the data that we were able to glean from the victims, their company officers, the incident commander, if there was a safety officer present, trying to interview as many people, listening to the communications audio tapes, as well as looking at SOPs, SOGs, training and other things that sort of lay the foundation for what we're seeing and then what is the best way to prevent them. And that's what we're entering into now, is the last phases of Project Mayday. We're looking at how do we prevent these Maydays. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as how we're going to start breaking those down over a 2-month period and doing basically information on specific types of Maydays. And then how do we prevent them? How do we train for them? And then if we have one, how we need to react to it.
Yeah, good stuff. And we're gonna dig into that stuff, but I just wanted to let everybody know that this last year at FDIC, Don was so gracious to attend my class, the Mayday Monday class, and it was great to see him come in there and recognize kind of what we're doing here Mayday Mondays to try and get the information out. With that, let me start off here. Let me go share my screen and look at some of this stuff here. Again, this is our graphic for this month. You guys will be able to use that for your stuff. Again, it really is the very small amount of data that he's got in the website there for us to look at. This one just talks about, I've got on our slide there, types of Maydays, and then we're going to look at some of the Mayday rescue, like who rescues the Mayday firefighter. So that stuff's on there. Again, that should give you, this should like whet your appetite for more information. And you can see the website on there. It's projectmayday.net. You can get in there and dig into his stuff. He's talking about 16,000 Maydays, information from 16,000 Maydays, career and volunteer, that's available to us to use to, again, to survive the fireground, right? To go on. This is last month's stuff. Again, highways, while not really touched on in his information on the Mayday, on the Project Mayday, we're going to touch on it here in Mayday Mondays, because again, this is a lot of our firefighters are dying in traffic, in highway incidents. We want to make sure that this is kind of showing you again a taste of just some of the 12. This is the 12th podcast. We talked to firefighters from Ohio a couple times. We talked to the New York City guys. We talked to DC guys. We talked to Buffalo. We talked to Virginia. We talked to a lot of people, Wilmington, Delaware, right? We had a great interview with the guys from Wilmington who haven't really talked to anybody else. And they talked to us about the incident they had, which took 3 of their firefighters. So this is good stuff. And fire engineering has really, really helped us to bring this to you. The podcast of just another facet in the Mayday Monday firefighter survival campaign. So please go check these things out. Again, that's Don. This is the early days of what Don was doing for us. You can see some of those dioramas that he was taking around and doing. And I know, Don, you were a fan, and he was a fan of you, right? Chief Brunacini, and what he was doing out there with the command training center. So I want to play a video here that we have of Chief Brunacini, because I really think that if he was still here, he'd be one of the interviewees on our Mayday Monday, because he really gets that the fireground can be dangerous, and we have to make sure we survive it. So watch this video here. I really like this. This comes to us from some of that Into the Smoke stuff, but just, if you will, let me take a couple of seconds, and this is a minute long. We'll play this.
Management's an interesting time in our lives, and let me use the word lives again, because it's the only time, really and truly, there may be a few exceptions to it medically, but where we know exactly what our life expectancy is. Because we put an SCBA on and we go into a IDLH hazard area, is we're going to live within the framework of the air supply that we have in that tank. That's a pretty compelling set of conditions when you sort of think about it. Is to say, if you got 14 minutes of air left, you're going to live 14 more minutes. Whoever is trying to figure out whether they should or they shouldn't ought to kind of ponder, whatever firefighter is, sort of ponder that. And this is the business about running out of air, about being stupid with reserve air supplies, is to say that is necessarily, and we ought to put it in those terms. In fact, maybe we ought to say that more. Is that just simply your life expectancy? Come on the radio and say, engine one, you have 14 minutes to live.
I had to play that because I couldn't say that. That just rings home some of the information that you're giving out that we're getting from these Maydays, right? And we'll talk a little bit about out of air emergencies and how there's still a lot of those, even with all the work that we've done on rules of air management. The SCBA, now we have a longer end of service, right? Indicator, it comes on sooner. We're carrying more air on our backs. We're making them lighter, right? More user, and we still have a lot of out of air emergencies with us. So let me get back to this PowerPoint here, and we can look at some of this data. This is this is, I guess, probably a little bit older, right?
Yes.
Because it looks at like 6,500. I think you have
right.
6,500. Is this career Maydays?
Yes, these are careers.
But you've been able to kind of boil them down into, what is that, 10 causes there?
Yeah, basically. There's 9 primary types of Maydays. We have actually about 3 more that the statistics just don't, or the data doesn't support looking at those percentages. So we basically have identified these.
And this is all like submitted stuff to you, right?
Yes,
Did you go
yes.
out and seek this, or is it just kind of
some of it,
website?
some of it we get text messages, phone calls, emails. A fire marshal or somebody will contact us, and then I always try to talk to the chief within about a week of the Mayday, getting his permission to participate, and then we explain what we're doing, how we're going to conduct interviews, things that we would like to get from them. We believe we're getting somewhere around 16 to 18% of the actual Maydays that take place.
16%?
About 16 to 18%.
You mean less than a quarter of the Maydays?
We get reported to us, yes.
Look, wow. So you really think that there's that many Maydays?
There's a lot that aren't getting reported. Yes.
Yeah, but we still have, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot of Maydays.
It is, and when you look at the numbers, especially what I call the top 4, lost and separated from hose lines, falls in the basements, air problems, and falls through the roof or off the roof. The first 2 years that we did the project, number 4 was number 1. That's how, and it's dropped just about 4.5% each year for the last 3 years. That number has continually dropped. And so it shows that when we pay attention, we maybe refocus our training. The IC has better instructions for the roof crew, getting them off the roof as soon as they cut the hole and all that kind of stuff. It's paid off because it's dropped from number 1 to number 4, basically in 3.5 years. So now we need to work on the first 3 and to get them to drop the same way.
So that number's been dropping. Is there a number that's been going up?
Yes. The number air problems, to give you an example, in the month of September, 41% of the Maydays reported to us dealt with air problems.
This September of 2021.
Yes, dealt with air problems. And then lost and separated from hose, falls in the basements, entanglement, explosions, collapse type things. But air, as was pointed out in the video with Chief Bernasini, it's become a bigger problem, and we're not sure why. But in our interviews we've been conducting, I think that we left we didn't teach the new air standards correctly. You have a third, and a third. And a lot of people, when we listen to these audio tapes, you can hear the low air alarm going off from 4, 5, 6 minutes in the background when they should be out of the building, you know? And so I don't think we've taught that very well, because I think that some people thought we gave them more air by doing this system, which we didn't. And the other thing is we give them extra air to get out. Well, that's true, but you got to get out, or at least starting out, you know, when you get to first yellow, you know. So yeah, it's when we've done these interviews, it's you get confusion across the board, and a lot of it has to do with basically training.
No, I think you're right, right. And I've retired from DC. We just went to 45-minute cylinders. We had 60-minute cylinders, you know, for the whole time I was there until this last year. And so not only did we went from 60 to 45, and then we went from a quarter to a third, right? So our usable time really went down, while we got a lighter air pack, which I think we're all happy about that.
Yes.
But the focus didn't necessarily work out right. And I think nobody really understood that. You know, from an industrial standpoint, right, we would be in trouble when our low air alarm goes off, because that's strictly for emergency reserve.
Yes.
Right. And in it seems like we've almost gotten to, let me get to my low air before I leave.
I think we've become complacent because we've done it like that for so long that it's hard to change that habit, you know, that, hey, you know, we're measuring it differently. You need to understand we're trying to give you more escape time, you know. Well, if you give me more escape time, then that really gives me a little bit more work time. No, it doesn't work that way. But,
well, and the houses have gotten bigger, right?
Yes. Oh,
so
yeah.
While 20 years ago, I was pretty close to a door or window in the single family dwelling. Now they've gotten bigger, so you're farther away from that escape, or even, you know, it could be more confusing layout too.
Yes, multiple levels. You know, how often do you search a 10,000 or 12,000 square foot house? Not very often.
No.
And you can't treat it like you do a 2,400 square foot house, because that's what's going to get you in trouble. And, you know, we talk about that when we talk about big boxes, because one of the problems we see in warehouse fires and big boxes where people run out of air more consistently, it's because we treat them like a residence. And we think that, you know, we can, you know, it's going to be easier to get out because we don't have all that crap to walk over. No, you go in too deep. Now you have not given you enough time to escape. So
yeah, and I agree. And we touched on that back with we did a Mayday Monday with Worcester, guys from Worcester.
Yes.
And there was another one too, where we talk about residential tactics in commercial settings. So not only do we pull a residential hose line that's overmatched, then we treat our SCBA like we're in a small building too.
Yes.
You know, and
Exactly.
we forget to take some of our tools with us, like a search rope. You know, we all have these things now, right? So yeah, and that's all in your data. I think that's good stuff. Well, I don't have, again, there's so much stuff there. I couldn't put it all in the slides here for us to talk about.
Sure.
I hope that everybody will go and dig deeper into the stuff there. I think this is an important one here too, right? Because you see that the Maydays, right? Most of the Maydays are in that 6 to 10 years of experience.
Yes. And, you know, we've in our interviews, and we have 2 psychologists that work as part of our advisory group who have participated in the interviews. And one of the things that they talk about after we've done the interviews and so forth is that because you've gotten away with something every time you went on a fire, doesn't mean you're going to be able to do that same thing on this fire. And we get complacent, and in that complacency, it's not putting your hood on all the way or correctly, not getting your gloves on before you enter. The simple stuff, that it seems like we're in a bigger hurry to get in and get hurt than we have been in the past.
Yeah, and I remember being back the younger firefighter with that kind of time on, where you got kind of comfortable, right? But you thought you had a lot of information, but nowadays, right, 6 to 7 years of experience is not that many fires.
No, it's not. Not in today's society, no.
So while you think you've been to a lot, you really haven't had that much. So I can see that's probably what we
Yes,
talk about in
sure.
some of the psychology things, right? You get that
Yes.
1 to 5 year where you're nervous, you don't really feel comfortable yet. Then you get that period of comfort, that Dunning-Kruger kind of thing where you think you know more than you actually do, and it can get you into trouble.
Exactly.
So this is good though. I think it should drive home this stuff to anybody who's looking at it, right? If
I
you
hope.
are researching it, if I'm a 26 plus year, unfortunately the numbers are low, but that's because there's not as many of us in that spot. And
Exactly.
I think in addition, hopefully we have more experience, so maybe
And
we
most
don't
of
put
them are
ourselves.
outside.
What's that?
Yeah, most of those people are outside too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, the age stuff, this is one way to drive the data back home so everybody can look at it. This one too, again, while I think, again, we're going to more fires, right? Everybody goes to residential fires. Everybody does.
Yes.
And some towns out there don't have any commercial stuff.
Yeah. Well, what we have been seeing is in commercial structures, basically a 1.8% rise in Maydays in commercial structures over the last 3.5 years. So that commercial numbers is going up while the multi-occupancy is going down and the residential is going down a little. And what we're finding is that especially with smaller fire departments, cities wanting to increase basically their tax base, or they want to increase their purpose. They're starting to allow, giving 10 and 15-year tax abatements to build warehouses. Yet the fire department's not getting much of that money or people. And all of a sudden, now you're fighting commercial building fires that you didn't have before, simply because, they want to give, a lot of stuff away to get them, and that's okay. But at some point, you got to pay the piper. Excuse me. All too often, we're not thinking far enough ahead. I tell fire departments, if you are a smaller department and you're looking to, and the city's looking to build warehouses, put in there that they're going to give you land for a new station, or they're going to buy a piece of equipment. Just don't let them, because we're going there for 10 and 15 years for free.
Yeah, right. But if they're getting a tax break, but they should make some kind of investment in their protection, right? I mean, while they pay insurance and they take these things to lower their costs, if they added to us, they would help out with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep.
No, and where I just went to a rural place in Virginia, and guess who's coming? Google, right?
Yeah.
Amazon, they're coming to these places, and these buildings are huge.
Oh yeah.
And while again, they've got lots of good fire protection in them. Well, when it fails, then we have to go take care of that.
Exactly. And it doesn't take long for fires to overwhelm those systems. That's what people need to understand. While sprinkler systems are designed to do a variety of things, one of the things is they don't very often put the fire out in commercial buildings. They make it tolerable for us to get in and fight them. but sometimes that doesn't happen either.
Yeah, and that's some nasty conditions, right? When you're
Yes.
getting in
Oh,
there
yeah.
with the
Cold
sprinkler
smoke.
going,
Cold
and then you got
smoke.
to drag a hose line, probably a
Yeah.
big hose line with small crews.
You know, people
Yeah.
don't, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to take my tick in. Well, ticks don't work well in cold smoke, you know. So as a result, you know, some of the things that we rely on in a residential fire don't work as well in a commercial building when the sprinklers are going off. So
No, let's focus in here. This is
number
this is the
one,
number one, right? This is the
yes,
number one.
number one.
And you say that the numbers are probably this is a couple of years old, this data.
This is, let's see, I gotta look at it. That's probably about a year and a half old, year and a half old, maybe, let's see. No, maybe, yeah, a little bit longer than that.
So this
Probably
was
2.5.
6,500 Maydays, right?
Yep, yes,
And out of that, 1,400 of them lost, separated from the hose line.
yes,
And I don't want to make it seem crazy, but this is like skill one, right?
yes. Oh, yeah, this is firefighter one. I mean, this is, you know, yet you go to a lot of fire departments, and when somebody brings up, oh, we need to do some hose evolution training. Oh, that's routine stuff. That's basic stuff. We don't need to practice that. Yeah, you do, because that's our bread and butter. That's the kind of thing that, you know, that we should realize that is getting us in trouble. You know, when we talk about loss, that is nobody's on a hose line at all. You know, then getting separated is another issue, depending upon the length of the line and what kind of structure you're going into. But lost is lost. You know, I mean, there's nothing to reference yourself to in regards to getting out. Where separated, you maybe get off the line too far and conditions change. Now you can't find the line. Now you're in trouble. And one of the things we talk about is that because houses are getting bigger, you need to look at your hose loads, because at least 25%, if not maybe more in some cases, is outside. So if you're taking a 200-foot pre-connect in, there's a good chance 50 feet's outside. So it means you only got 150 feet to work with. So, and having somebody at the door letting you know every time a coupling goes through their hands, be advised, you've got 100 feet of hose now. You know, when I know I've got 50 feet outside, that means I only got 50 more feet to work with. You know, so I think sometimes we get caught into the hose issue, and we don't recognize how it gets us in trouble. We just know we get in trouble. So
Yeah, you mentioned training, and it's so frustrating. I was in a firehouse recently where there was, you know, a list of like this was an engine firehouse, right? They had an engine there,
okay,
and there was a list of like training topics, and they had like vehicle stabilization and you know other things, you know, sexy things to drill on, hazardous material like maybe an operations thing, and nowhere on their list was like hose line management.
yes,
So I get it, right? That's one
it's
where
critical.
when we
Yeah.
pulled the hose line last day, you know, we pulled. Well, did you charge it? Did you operate in zero vis? So yeah, those are the basics.
You know,
That
how often do they pull a 2.5 or 3-inch hose and advance it into a building? Not very often. You know, so those are the things that need to be practiced. Yeah.
yeah, looking at your numbers here, that again, that bottom yellow bar, that commercial number again, that's just 50% of our
Yep.
Maydays.
It's when it deals with getting, mainly these are getting lost, where you actually get off the hose line to the point that you are lost, you know, and hopefully somebody's listening to the radio on your crew, or they hear you, or you hear them, and you can get back to the line. But in a lot of these, our most recent Mayday was, or I won't say the most recent, but the most recent where we were in a commercial building, which happened to be a cold storage facility, which made radio communications even harder. They got off the hose line and didn't realize that when they got off the hose line, the building changed in shape. You know, they thought they could go straight across and they'd be fine. Well, when they went straight across, they ran into a wall.
Mm.
And then they had to follow the wall. And then when they followed the wall, they come to another wall. And all of a sudden now they're lost. They have no idea where they're at even in the building. So.
Yeah, that's I can understand, right? If we go in without a hose line, typically those
Yeah.
people, are probably right. We put the senior people on those trucks with. That's again, that was a good practice, was to put
Yes,
your
yes.
veterans on those ones that are going to operate without,
You
or
know,
we give them other tools, right? We give them a rope or something.
yes. Well, you talked about, taglines, whatever you want to call them. Well, we have found that when people use those, the only time they use them is on a real incident. They don't train on them. So
Mhm.
sometimes that's when it gets, you haven't had a fire for 2.5 months where you've used it. Do you remember what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to use it and what's to not, all that kind of stuff. Because we consider it to be operational type stuff we do routinely, we just don't train on it when we should routinely train on it to make us better when we actually have to deploy it.
Yeah, I try to use that, that sports analogy. And when we see the, pro athletes, football players practice tackling every practice,
Yes.
right? And baseball players practice the pepper and throwing, and yeah, they do all that.
Yeah, it's all basic stuff. So.
Here's some more information here that I see you dug down deeper into why they became separated.
Yeah, and again, what we're finding, I think, when it says to search a larger area of rooms, you go into a 24, you run the hose down a hallway and you find a room on the right, you search it. At the most, you're probably 15 feet off the hose in the hallway. Now you get into a house that's 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 feet, and you get off that hose, you're now 25 feet from the hose that's in the hallway. And then you come to a door, you open the door, it's a walk-in closet, just almost the size of the room you're in.
Yeah.
You find another door that leads to a bathroom. Then
a master bath,
yeah. Then you find another door off that bathroom that leads to another bedroom. Now you're 50, 60, 70 feet off the hose line.
Yeah.
And you better hope you can get back to it pretty quick.
Yeah, no, again, that's a good point, right? And I think all of these things, everybody, and these are those things where they did it on the last house, right? They did it on the last fire and it was no problem, but it was a 2,000.
Yeah.
It was a 2,000 square foot house, the last one.
You go all of a sudden, one of our last Mayday that we had last month, which is pretty typical that we're seeing, is that we had an engine company that normally, when they are in their district, most of the residences are anywhere from 1,000 feet to maybe 2,800 feet.
Mm-hmm.
They went out of district because of the closest engines weren't available, so they ended up going out of district, and they're at a 5,600 square foot house.
Yeah.
And they normally don't see those, and they treated it as, a 1,500 square foot house, and it got them in trouble. They've not only got off the hose lines, but one of them ran out of air. So, thinking that, well, we don't have to worry about those bigger homes. Well, if everybody's busy, your number comes up, you're going, and you can't pick what you go on. So you may all of a sudden be thrown in a 12,000 square foot house unexpectedly, and you better know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, I look at that bottom bullet there, right? What time? What was the time? And in zero visibility, 4 minutes away. That's crazy.
It is. It is. We've got them longer than that, but the average here is 4 to 7 minutes. Yeah.
And then if you think about, all right, I have a 45-minute air pack.
Yeah. That's
10% of the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another one here. This one hits home because we did a lot of this past year at Mayday Mondays. We talked to people, a lot of places where their line of duty deaths happen with basements, right? They fell into basements. Mm-hmm. I'm also in the ISFSI, and we're doing a new push on understanding and fighting basement fires. We have a practical, a hands-on training class that we're pushing out. We're getting great stuff, great information
Good.
out there about this. And I know when I was at FDIC, I played that tape. Remember Gary Morris
Yes.
said that quote about if you fall into a basement, it's almost always deadly.
Yes.
And that shudders, right? It just makes your
It's 68% deadly.
Yeah,
And you have a
that's
Mayday, 68% of the time you're not going to survive.
yeah, and that's the thing, right? I think one of the biggest ones that again, that bottom bullet basement was visible during the 360.
But it wasn't, but it either, we didn't comprehend that information, or it didn't get passed on, or we think that, hey, it's just a basement, it's just part of the house. We'll get down there, or maybe not. So
And that I know I had one years ago, and the guy told me we're going to take it right down the throat, right? They're going to go right down the interior stairs, and I again I get it if that's your only path.
Yes.
But if there's other options, right,
You need to use
probably
it.
better.
Yes. Because what we found in basement fires, and this illustrates it probably better than anything else, is that everybody seems in our surveys with the victims, most of the time they're standing up. They're not down on their hands and knees, tapping and sounding the floor and so forth. They're standing up. And the problem is when there's a collapse or a hole, it's much harder to recover when you're standing up than it is when you're on your hands and knees.
Yeah.
That becomes an issue. And then as
we've been trying to teach that techniques, right? The technique of how to sound the floor.
Yes. And as it states here, 87% of the time, when you fall through a floor into the basement, you're going to dislodge your face piece. And that means you're going to lose some air. And oftentimes the priority is not getting that face piece fixed and sealed again. We sort of, because you're losing air, and the more air you lose, the more trouble you're going to get into. Wilmington was a great example of that, is that, but again, we saw that 41% of the people also lost their helmets. Why? They didn't put their helmet straps on. So yeah, and when we talk to the training officers of those departments, they don't push wearing your helmet strap in training. So therefore it becomes a habit. I forgot to put it on. Well, you got to put it on in training, just like, because we train the way we should play. So
one of the biggest things we're trying to emphasize is that 360, right? Making sure, taking that extra steps to identify that it is a basement. Then when you identify the basement, then maybe you can find an alternative way to get in there. At least, an alternative way to get some water flowing into that basement, because we're showing that it helps.
Sure. Everybody thinks they got to go down the stairs,
Yeah.
Well, you're going to probably end up doing that, but make sure that you've got protection lines in place, make sure that you got enough hose. One of the things that we have found most recently in the last year is, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm going to say it's at least, I know it's more than 85%. Other people told us that when they got down in the basement, they didn't have enough hose line to finish either the search or the firefight in the basement, because there was basically separations in the basement, rooms, bedrooms, rec rooms, utility, that kind of stuff. So they ended up having not enough hose to do anything with when they got down there.
Yeah, and that's I know I was raised on the idea of putting that line to protect. We put the line at the top of the basement steps to protect the search above.
Yes.
Right. Well, we typically aren't finding fire traveling up those steps.
No.
We do find heat, like deadly heat.
Yes.
But we don't find the fire extends through the floor.
Yes.
So it would be much better idea to go just put the fire out.
Yes.
Than to put a line between upstairs and the basement.
Yeah. because
But
especially when you don't know, if there's a lot of small rooms in that basement because they finished their basement out, or is it one open room? And then we've noticed a lot with new homes in particular, that people like to have stairways that come down, and then they have a wall, and then they have steps going right and left.
yeah,
Well, if you don't know that, and that could serve as a deadly consequence down the road. But you don't have those layouts because we just don't pre-plan these homes. So
yeah. And here's another good one here. This is, I think, we could spend a little bit more time on this, but I mean, this could be another podcast, right? Talking about
Oh, yes.
rapid intervention stuff, but this really drives home, right? We spend a lot of time, training people on RIT, and it's important, right?
Yes,
we
I want
definitely
to
want to have we want to have reserves there to stand by in case someone gets into trouble.
exactly.
But a lot of focus should be maybe on self, right?
Self-rescue.
Personal survival.
Yes, the things you can do to save yourself or to buy you more time, that your crew can rescue you, maybe another interior crew, or the RIT team. I want to say one thing, because sometimes people think I'm against RIT teams. I'm not. I think you got to have RIT teams. And I think the problem is sometimes is the attitude of the RIT team, but we need to make sure we still do RIT training. But self-rescue training is the most critical, because it's almost 36% of the people rescue themselves. And that's mainly because either one, they get lucky, or two, they were trained and applied that training to get themselves out.
Right. And then that even drives home that whole thing about we got to have a lot of survival training, because you're going to resort, right? You're going to resort to your muscle memory.
Yes, your habits. That's all you're going to, that's what you're going to remember. One of the things that Dr. Stewart always said, that because he was involved was in the Navy for 27 years, and he worked with the submarine fleet. And one of the things he always talked about is that the way you train is the way you're going to react.
Yeah.
And that's what's critical, because you may not have time to think and process a lot of information other than what you were trained to do.
Yeah, it needs to be react, right?
Yes.
Yeah. This is good. This is a really good information that should get out. Again, no one's saying don't have a RIT team.
No, definitely not.
Just understand the reality of where that goes. It should be something we train on, absolutely.
Yes,
but it may
definitely
not be all.
And let me add one other thing on RIT, and that is the attitude that people have towards RIT. I've heard them. Got some video of it, people talking, and it was a real good video clip from one of the TV shows that deals with fire. But people don't want to be RIT. You want to fight fire, because that's why you joined the fire service. That's why you're in a fire. But the RIT is the most important people on the fire ground. And if your head's not in the game when you go in, you more than likely, and we've got this, excuse me, in our statistics, 1 out of every 9 RIT teams has their own Mayday.
Yeah.
That ain't good, because you got to figure out now, do we go after the original guy, or do we go after the RIT team? Because that's probably who we're going to come to first.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's, we had an SOG where when someone declares a Mayday, the incident commander will automatically switch the radio channels. Well, when we're looking here, that another 50% of the Maydays are cleared by people in that vicinity.
Yes.
Right. Whether it's their own crew or an interior crew that's operating close by.
Exactly.
Well, if we have them change the channel, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So again, if we're going to go down the path of a big RIT incident, right, a big RIT operation, then perhaps yes, we need to change the channel, right? Yeah. But again, so we should all take this. We should look at the data that's driving how we're going to set up our guidelines. And this is a good one there.
Yeah, one of the things I mentioned is that oftentimes the incident commander we'll hear the victim's crew say, we're going to start searching for them, or we're going to do whatever. Or another interior crew elects to tell command that rather than being assigned that. But we need to monitor their air because, again, you don't want additional Maydays because they've stayed in too long trying to make some of these rescues that they shouldn't be trying to make. So monitoring those crews' air is critical for the incident commander.
So again, looking into your stuff, you got this really good list here of
Yes.
things to remember, right? For us, if we want to drive it home in our training, these are some things that we can do, right? Call for the Mayday
Yes.
as soon as you realize. As
Yes.
soon as you realize.
Yeah,
Did you
don't,
see?
because oftentimes what happens is people think, well, I think I can get out of this, a wire entanglement, let's say. And all of a sudden you spend 3 or 4 minutes trying to get out of it and you still aren't out of it. You've just delayed your help by 3 or 4 minutes. So you think you realize it, call it, you can always cancel it.
Yeah.
And we can go
Yeah.
back to normal. But a lot of people are afraid to do that because they're afraid of the stigma that other people will think of them. Well, you couldn't handle that. You couldn't get out of those wires, so they hesitate sometimes in calling some of these Maydays. So.
No, yeah, that's something, right, that you found, that we found before, and it needs to, we need to get away from that. I like the declare Mayday ×3, right? Because if we
Yes.
say something 3 times, hopefully somebody will be like, oh, this
Somebody's
must
going
be
to hear it.
important.
Yes, I hope. Yeah. And I'm not trying to tell you that this should be a policy, but one of the things that we found is that when people call Maydays and then they wait for command to come back to them, oftentimes they've not been able to get on the radio for an average of 79 seconds.
Mm.
So we've sort of said, call your Mayday, who you are, your unit, and what your problem is, and then release the microphone. And that way you've got at least your message out and that they know who it is, where you're at, and so forth. Because if you just call Mayday, 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 firefighter Abbott, engine 4, and I'm waiting for command to say something, there's other radio traffic that's going on. And what we found was, in order for you as the Mayday victim to get back on the radio to finish your message, it was an average of 79 seconds.
Wow. No, and that's something that I know you see in your information. You have it on the website where, right, the lessons learned by some of the Mayday people was, I couldn't get back on the radio.
Yeah.
And we all know there's too much talking. And again, when the Mayday call comes in, we need to have that discipline to stop unnecessary stuff and get it in. But I think this can almost go to everything. I know as an incident commander, I told them, if you can get mic time, don't wait, give it out. This is, again, we can start this stuff and we should be part of our practice, calming down, think that self-help, self-rescue stuff. And if nothing else, conserve your air.
Yes.
I just got done yesterday. I took one of the crews at work and we went to our local gym and they let us get on the treadmill. And again, I was just trying to give them an idea of how long they can make their SCBA last. And, I told them, imagine when that low air alarm started sounding, if you had laid on the floor, if you would have made that thing last half an hour.
Yeah.
So you can see how you can control your air, but you have to consciously, think about that.
Yeah. It's your breathing techniques that you use that are important. So, yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. And what we found is all too often people get caught up in the situation and they don't slow down. They don't conserve their air like they should. And then they end up having problems. So.
No, and this gives us a list that's on your website.
Yes.
One of the when you put the fire out, stay off the radio, right? Again, keep doing your job that you're assigned to do. I
tell people, when you hear the word Mayday, Mayday, Mayday over the radio, what it really means is shut up, shut up, shut up. Stay off the radio. everybody else. This is between the victim, the IC, and the RIT team. So,
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, there was an article just recently, I think it was last month's fire engineering from Dan Shaw of Fairfax.
yes,
And
yes,
he talked about managing the Mayday. And one of the things he talked about, and I hear this a lot too, is you hear the incident commander, evacuate the building,
yeah,
right? Evacuate the building. We have a Mayday. Well, that's just the opposite.
yeah. And that usually what we have found doesn't happen. I mean, maybe a crew or two will evacuate, but not everybody. So,
Another slide I found, this is in your PowerPoint presentation that you did at FDIC. This is good words, right? If the only way to guarantee it is to prevent it.
yes. And sometimes it's the simplest of stuff. You know, we got one last month where if the firefighter had taken an extra 20 seconds to pull his hood up and to tuck it in and to make sure that he had one glove on when they entered. He was going to put his other glove on when they got inside the door, but he lost it. You know, so he's got one glove on, one glove off. Hood's not completely tucked or where it should be. And he ends up getting burned when they have a flashover. You know, 20 seconds would have made the difference, you know, but instead.
So that when we talk about how hose line management is like lesson number 1, that getting dressed is probably lesson 0.5, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it seems simple. And we talk about that and we say it a lot.
Yes.
The very basics are important. And sometimes we just don't do them.
This is these are from the victims, right? From the people
Right.
who have called
Yes,
them Mayday.
People, yes.
And
most of the people told us that after they lost situational awareness, you know, after about a minute and a half to 3 minutes, they started becoming disorientated. And what we found is when you have a situational awareness problem and you become disorientated, your decision making is not very good. And it has a tendency to have you do other things that you would normally never do normally in a fire, let alone in a Mayday. So
that's that cascading of events, right?
yes, yep, the cascading events, the domino effect. So
this is this one really got me too. It sparked in 37% of the Maydays, the company officer stayed outside to serve his command.
Yes, this was an interesting incident. The young firefighter, been on 3.5 years, was his battalion chief basically wrote him up a written reprimand, and he asked the firefighter to write something, you know, that, you know, I'm going to write you up, or I'm going to verbal or write you up, one of the two. I want you to tell me something. So he wrote a paragraph, and in that paragraph it said, "In my defense, I was left unsupervised."
That's classic.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. So I talked to him, and then I talked to the battalion chief, he's IC, and he said, "Yeah, we got to work on this." And what people need to understand is 23.5% of the time when a Mayday is called, there is no IC, battalion chief or higher. It's usually a company officer who's running the Mayday. And we have not done a very good job of training our company officers to run Maydays with limited resources.
Yeah, so a couple things there, right? A couple of things is we're having our company officers be in command of the fire when they probably should be leading their company.
Yes.
And then that puts them in a position to manage a Mayday.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So.
No.
Yeah.
All right. So here's again some other stuff that we can drive home. If you're thinking, if it's you're training and you want to think about put some things in your head to practice. You know, again, if you are a victim of a incident where you need to call a Mayday, collect your thoughts, control your breathing, advise the incident commander of your intentions, make noise. This is good. And this goes back, if you're familiar with the IAFF's Fireground Survival Training,
Yes,
and the grab lives,
it's a good
right?
thing.
They came up
Yes.
with the grab lives, which it was big. It's a big one.
Yeah.
And I
Move it
think
too
it's really
long.
good.
That's okay. Yeah.
But I think it's actually really good for the incident commander
Oh,
to
yes.
look at the grab lives, right? Because
Exactly.
then he can suggest, make noise. He can suggest,
Yes.
control your breathing.
Yes. You can do a lot of things to help that victim calm down and control their breathing.
Yeah, so maybe this is a list we keep at the command post.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it should. I'm a big fan that somewhere on your tactical worksheet, in a box on the front or flip it over and the whole thing on the back is how to handle a Mayday with boxes. Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Who did I assign that to? That kind of stuff. Because we don't do Maydays all that often. And oftentimes we sort of miss some of the things we should.
No, I agree. I came up with a clipboard that we would carry on the rigs. Unfortunately, it gets left on the rig, but
Yeah.
all right, here's these are from the victim's words, right?
Yes, this is what
Some of the
they
things
told
that
us.
they reported. This is what you found during interviews.
Yes, this one we did interviews. These are repeated comments. It's just not one person said it. We had large numbers of people say these things. So, and we sort of put them in order too. So,
Yeah,
and number one is deteriorating conditions came faster than they expected, and at the same time they couldn't react fast enough to that.
yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, we
Yeah.
know that with all of the new products, the plastics and stuff, that these
Oh,
things
yeah.
are changing quicker than they ever have, and obviously you didn't expect it, or you wouldn't have been in the position that you were in
Right.
to have to call a Mayday. This is from the RIT team, right?
Yes.
The RIT team reported.
When we surveyed the RIT teams, was, I believe, 539 at the time. The air was used out of the RIT bag the most, followed by replacing face pieces because in somebody's panic situation, they pull too hard on the straps, breaks the straps. Now it's difficult to get the seal, replacing regulators and that type of stuff. So this is what they told us they used for low air and out of air. So
We just personally took my fire department through some RIT stuff, and we did the face piece replacement, which is it's
hard.
very hard.
Yeah.
But
was-
but you're showing that it happens a lot.
Oh, yeah. And I always tell people wet their face down and their hair down because they're sweating. It makes that putting on that face piece even tougher. And
We
getting
need
a
to
good
come up
seal.
with like a hood or something.
Yeah. I don't know. There's got to be it. Well, most of the RIT crews have told us when they put on those face pieces, it's some of the hardest things they've ever had to do.
Yeah.
And many of them have told us that they've had to take their gloves off to do it.
Oof.
Yeah, I know. But, at least they're being honest about it. That, yeah, we had to take our gloves off. Okay, and that's why I'm a fan of putting a large metal ring
Yeah.
at the end of those straps so that you don't have to, your fingered glove should be able to go through that ring and tighten it.
Yeah, I think I know Scott had a big flap
Yes,
on the net
yes.
that makes it easier with gloved hands
Oh,
to pull
yeah.
that over.
Oh, yeah.
One thing I do like on the bottom there, folding ladder. A couple months ago, we talked with Chief Lombardo from Buffalo,
Yes,
and talked about the incident that took two of their members in that the deli
yes.
basement
Delicate,
fire.
yes,
And one of the things he said was folding ladder.
yes.
And get that folding ladder, especially wagon drivers. After you've got the line charge, maybe you just bring that over, set it by the front door, because it can make a difference, especially something quick.
Yeah, that's, let me
Right.
say one thing about RIT. On our website, after the first of the year, we're going to have a audio tape, and it's going to be bold printed in red because it's an audio tape that everybody should hear. This is of a real incident. we have a young firefighter who basically falls through a hole and falls into the basement. He calls, now I'll sort of give it to you, but he calls them Mayday, 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 firefighter Abbott, engine 4, I've fallen into the basement. I have active fire in the basement. I'm crawling to the Bravo side away from the fire. I believe I've broken my ankle. And then command repeats everything back, just like they did. And about 24 seconds later, command to firefighter Abbott, engine 9 is the RIT team and they are coming in to get you now. About 40 some seconds later, firefighter Abbott to command. Go ahead, firefighter Abbott. Could you send engine 4 instead? He was asking for a different engine than the one command sent, because he knew if he wanted to get home that night, engine 9 wasn't going to cut it and get him out. Now we laugh about that every time I play that or tell people about it. They sort of laugh, and I said, do you have that situation on your own department? Or is there an engine that if you got to rely upon to get you out of the basement, can they do it? Yeah, there's a couple we probably couldn't. Now I'm not sure. Well, let's make them come up to standards, or we just don't use them as a RIT team because everybody knows who they are. So let's be honest about it. So yeah, interesting.
Right. And this is, I thought that when they put out the RIT, NFPA standard,
yes,
that would kind of make us evaluate, really evaluate our capabilities.
But you know what? Only about 13% of fire departments are using it.
Yeah, those things, some of those things, there's a lot of people who are NFPA averse, right? They don't want to,
yes.
They don't want to look at it.
Exactly.
So they don't even find a golden nugget that might be in one or two of these
things.
Yeah,
that's what I tell people. You don't have to adopt the entire damn thing. You pick and choose what works for you. It's sort of like we would have people get on the website, download the Phoenix SOPs, then white out Phoenix and put in the name of their own department. Well, if you've only got 4 stations and 12 pieces of equipment, that's not what that SOP was wrote for.
Yeah.
It was wrote for, hundreds of pieces of equipment, thousands of men and women, and multiple stations. But, they try to make it work. No, you got to pick and choose what works for you. And that may not be a lot. So.
Yeah. That's you have to really look internally, right?
Yes.
As much as we love FDNY and they're huge, there's nobody that can do what they do.
Exactly. You don't have the resources that they have. And that's sort of that I want to bring up one issue here that we've seen is that if you are doing mutual aid and you arrive on the scene and you are the mutual aid fire department and that incident commander makes you the RIT team, make sure that you've got their bag rather than yours, because if they use a different face piece than what you use, they use Scott and you use MSA, when you go to put it on them, it ain't going to work like it's supposed to. So make sure that you know what all the mutual aid departments around you have, what their RIT bags look like, etc. Because the reality is oftentimes we've got RIT bags that don't meet the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's what's frustrating is sometimes you see people, the mutual aid companies will go out and see what kind of hose loads they have. If they can hook up their hose lines to them, but they don't pay attention to maybe what the SCBA and what kind of RIT equipment they might have.
Yeah, we're more worried about couple of fittings and that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we've been at this thing a little over an hour now, and I can keep going. We could go on for hours looking at your data. With that in mind, is there a couple of things? I know you got some new stuff on the horizon that you're looking at, but usually I have the interviewees that I've talked to give us 2 or 3 things that they want the viewers to kind of take away. Is there something that really you want to highlight?
Yeah, there's 2 things. One of the things is the importance of the company officer. We're now realizing, and I think we've known that all along, they're the most important person on the fire ground because they supervise these people 24 hours a day. And so they know them. But at the beginning of your shift, if you're a company officer and you have somebody floating in or on overtime or whatever it might be, make sure you integrate them at the beginning of the shift with the crew. Introduce them. Talk about what your training schedule is for the day. Talk about anything else that you're going to do for the day, or any special things that you're going to be doing for the day. And then get feedback. Because what we're finding is oftentimes there's a disconnect between the company officer and new people or their crews, etc. And one of the things that we have found is if you look at the percentage of the time that they are actually involved in an incident, in other words, they are the fourth member of a crew. One of the highest, if you was to look by position, one of the areas that we have to concentrate on is that engineers make up a lot of our Maydays simply because most of the time when they go to training, they're pumping. So they don't put an air pack on. Most of the time when they go to a fire, they're pumping. They don't put an air pack on. But all of a sudden now we're at a mid-rise fire. We've already got enough people there pumping. They're now going to be the fourth person in our crew. And we need to make sure that we've done a good job of integrating them before that and understanding they're probably going to use up a little bit more air than a normal crew because they're not used to using the air and the fatigue factor. So I'm going to make them feed hose. I'm going to have them be the fourth person or the third person. Don't put them up on the nozzle. So we've got to rethink some of that as a company officer. Second thing is, thanks to Dr. McCourtney, we are looking at the sleep deprivation issue. And what we're finding is there are two categories. The category, what I call one, is you're tired before you even come to work. You're already sleep deprived because of a part-time job, a part-time business, family activities, or whatever. You need to come to work fairly fresh because you don't know what the rest of that shift's going to look like and the number of runs that you're going to have to make. And all too often, we've got people that basically are coming to work to relax from their part-time jobs or from their family situation or whatever. We got to do a better job of that because sleep deprivation, we're finding, is an important factor in situational awareness, disorientation, and decision-making because it shortens the time frame when you are sleep deprived.
Yeah, their decisions are not as good, right?
Sure, exactly. Especially, if you're 24, 48, that's one thing. When you start getting into these 48 or these 72-hour shifts, and we're letting people work overtime and other things, a great example is in August, we had a firefighter who was basically on his 68th hour.
Ooh.
And has a Mayday. Well, he'd been on 29 runs in that time period. So what should we expect? He's tired, he's fatigued, sleep deprived, and yet, we're allowing them work hours that they probably should. And especially, I know it's been tough during the pandemic because we've got people off with it. We've got people that we got to work overtime or fill in and so forth. But we just need to be far more attuned to our people in regards to their fitness, mentally and physically, as well as sleep deprivation.
Yeah, I think that just it compounds the whole thing about you got to take the job like seriously, right?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And everything 24/7. If you're going to come to work ready. Yes. Think about the job. Do that kind of stuff.
I knew a firefighter who owned his own business, and he used to tell people, "I come here to rest."
Yeah.
When I show up, I'm here to rest. This job, this business is killing me, so I come here to rest. No, that's not fair to your fellow firefighters, your crew.
Yeah, I overheard a firefighter talking the other day about how he went to work and he and his partner's goal was that fire truck didn't turn a wheel.
Yeah.
And it's just,
That's,
like
yeah,
like fingernails on the chalkboard, right?
yes, yes, very much so, very much so.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I think you've got a wealth of information on that. I hope that it's kind of weird. I want you to get more information, but I don't want there to be more Maydays.
Me too. I know exactly what you mean. We're actually going far more in depth in our interviews than we initially did when we started. And it's really helped a great deal. And plus, the middle of November, we will have an update on our website with new information, new data. And then at the end of the year in January, we'll combine a lot of other new things that we're doing. So
That's good. Good stuff. You got funding and stuff that you need?
yeah, we can always use funding. That's but it's it is what it is. And I don't do it because we're not making any money or anything. I do it because hopefully now I think we're seeing results, and that's what we do this for. Like I said, people who fell through roofs or off roofs were #1 for the first 2 years. They're now #4. So that means somebody's out there listening, and somebody else cares as much as we do about their people.
No, I agree, and I want to make sure. I know that grant funding is tough to come by sometimes. And we have supporters here that like the information and want to make sure it gets out there.
Sure, I appreciate it.
So thank you, Don. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate you coming on. Hope to see you. I know we'll see you in April back at FDIC.
Yes, it's going to be different again in April. But
I know,
yeah,
it's nice.
Yeah,
Not
nice.
summertime in Indy.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
all right, that's another edition of the Mayday Monday. This is the November 2021 Mayday Monday. Thank you for coming in and tuning. We'll see you in December. In the meantime, visit projectmayday.net and see all this great information. If you have if you had a close call, a Mayday, get on there and submit your information, because we all can help. It can help all of us, and we can learn from it. Thank you all again. See you next month.